with Paul, the thing that really impressed me was not only the risk of him trying this new thing that had never been started before, but the second thing was when he talked about that whole thing where he had built a whole business that was almost like a restaurant culture. They were doing soups and sandwiches and all this stuff. And he said, wait a minute, hold on. We're going a whole direction away from what our core message is. Let's stop, remodel the building, remove any opportunity to be a quote unquote restaurant, drop in a roaster, and really commit to coffee. I thought, man, what a ballsy move. You just created a whole traffic slew of people coming your direction that you were doing great at doing, but instead you said, no, we're committed to this, and I'm going to take a risk, and I'm going to lean into coffee. And you look what they're doing there with their 4 or 5 locations there in Corvallis, and it's an impressive thing they've got.
Welcome to the Coffee Experts Club, where we discuss all of the insights, expertise, and drama that goes into making your passion your profession. Our hosts, Aaron, Ben, and Drew, are 3 coffee experts who have taken their coffee experience and turned it into true expertise. They have consulted with major coffee brands throughout the United States and beyond, providing operations expertise and growth strategy for drive-thru openings, multiple locations, and everything in between. So brew yourself a cup and hang out a bit with the Coffee Experts Club.
Coffee Experts Club, Ben Clatterbuck. How are you doing, buddy?
Howdy. I'm doing great because I'm going to Belize soon.
Yeah, you're going to Belize soon, Ben. We're going to make a Belizer out of you. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be so good. For those of you joining us for the first time, Drew and I both have a coffee shop. We own a coffee shop together down there in Belize. We have 2 locations. First drive-thru coffee in Belize. Pretty powerful, pretty awesome. It's interesting that would be the way that you and I would kick off today, Ben, talking about trend setting, because I felt like we had an amazing time talking to Paul Tosberg of coffee culture in Corvallis this last session. And so I thought we could deep dive today on trend setting in coffee. I think a lot of times that we can just take for granted something that works so well here in the United States, especially Pacific Northwest, something that we're all so familiar with, but just the realization of that wasn't always the case, and I think that in going someplace like Belize, it isn't the case, and I think that's been something that's really unique to Drew and I is it's almost like going back in time. Like there's something that's exploded so big here. We're able to take lessons learned here and be ahead of the curve, which feels very unique, very Wild West, but I think that Paul was talking about a time here in the States when he kicked off, what do you say, like 92, 93, same era of Dutch Bros, like some of the big explosion that came from drive-thru coffee here and how he was trendsetter there. What were your thoughts on talking to Paul? I just thought it was such an inspiring time. If you missed last week's episode, make sure you go back and pick that up because it was a gem.
Definitely. I think it took an incredible amount of foresight to take in a concept that pretty much nobody had done. I mean, Starbucks started in 79? They really didn't pick off, blow up until mid-late 80s.
Right.
We're talking 5-6 years later, he's like, hey, I'll do this thing that one company is kind of done and nobody else is doing. And also we're talking about the 90s. It's not like you could just Google how to open a coffee shop, a drive-thru coffee shop.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. So we've got the masterclass out there for us, right? That's myfirstdrivethru.coffee, and we're going to walk you through step by step. If you haven't checked that out, free, completely free, go check it out, myfirstdrivethru.coffee. Even if you've opened drive-thrus before, go check it out because we give you our checklist of this is all the things you need to think through. This is how you procure a lot, and this is how you think through ingress, egress, and this is how you work through the city, and this is how you do your plans, and this is how you talk to construction people, and this is how you hire, and these are the different pieces you need machine-wise. We line it all out step by step, A to Z, pre, during, post. But he doesn't have the book, right? What did he tell us, Ben? What did he mix into his top shop at the beginning? Photoshop or something like that? A photo lab?
Yeah. Photo drive-through photo developing, which arguably too is really freaking smart for that time frame because photo developing was huge. I went to Costco, every summer to develop all my camp photos. Yeah, just an incredible amount of foresight and I would say risk with minimal amount of just education on how to even do that. The amount of research that I'm sure he's put into opening that coffee shop is probably insane. Whereas now, somebody could just jump on the masterclass, watch some videos, be like, okay, I get the gist of it. In the 90s, you're talking about having to go through paper catalogs of machine equipment.
Right.
Everything was so much more difficult to put that amount of risk into a business that nobody's really doing. It boggles my mind. I'm super impressed. It's also why I asked that question about sandwiches. Like there was a company here that also a coffee company that was early on in the 90s, but they were they were called Espresso World here way back in
Yeah, I
the
remember.
day.
Yeah.
But half, if not more of their sales were sandwiches. Like lunch hour, they had a whole sandwich menu, soup menu, everything to sort of boost the coffee sales. And they did well for a while because again, they were the only ones here. And so I asked that question. I was like, did you want to couple anything with it? Because that's a really risky move. And of course, his was photo developing. I'm super impressed. It's fun to talk to those OG coffee guys as they know like they've been like they literally were the trends and have been around at the start of every coffee trend that's come up since the beginning.
Well, and I think that it's one thing, like, obviously, like, those things were all super remarkable, at the beginning to be trendsetter, to be thinking ahead, to be watching the curve, I mean, to be brave enough, right? But then when he went on saying, and this is what I'd love to dig in with you a little bit too, because I think it's really unique, because it's something Wes said once. Wes Hayden from Roasters, which is where, Ben and I both started from, was Roasters Coffee in the Tri-Cities area, went from 1 to 2 to 5 to 15 in a roastery and then an exit, it's a national coffee chain. But something Wes said once, and that was, he said, most people just don't take that big a risk. Yeah, I mean, and he was talking about energy drinks. Wes developed
Yeah.
his own energy drink, very much in line with what Dutch Bros did with Rebel, what BlackRock has done with their energy drink Fuel, and so I created a whole line of let us help you develop your own energy drink. It's called DrinkWorks, drinkWRX.coffee. And it's intended to be that thing, right? Like, let me help you create your own energy drink. But, we went to trade shows and we peddled it out there, and it's a website online, but it's surprising to me how few people have actually taken me up on it because,
Hmm.
because they're like, I just don't want to make the jump. I'm going to stay something comfortable. I'm not going to take the risk. When for Wes, it was like, no, 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 I'm spending 50 grand on Red Bull every month. So how much is it going to cost me to create my own energy drink? Oh, I could do almost the same, maybe month's worth of what I'm already spending, turning it into creating my own and have about 6 months worth of volume. Yeah, that's the smart decision. But how a lot of coffee shops just get stuck in their ways. But the thing that I was really impressed with about Paul, and this is what I'd like to talk to you about, is there are some people that are just built to take the risk and to reap the benefits of taking the risk. Like with Paul, the thing that really impressed me was not only the risk of him trying this new thing that had never been started before, but the second thing was when he talked about that whole thing where he had built a whole business that was almost like a restaurant culture. They were doing soups and sandwiches and all this stuff.
Mhm.
And he said, wait a minute, hold on. We're going a whole direction away from what our core message is. Let's stop, remodel the building, remove any opportunity to be a quote unquote restaurant, drop in a roaster and really commit to coffee.
Mhm.
I thought, man, what a ballsy move. You just created a whole traffic slew of people coming your direction that you were doing great at doing. But instead you said, no, no, we're committed to this and I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to lean into coffee. And you look what they're doing there with their 4 or 5 locations there in Corvallis. And it's an impressive thing they've got. And their whole roastery arm. I'd love to talk about Andrew and their Holderness roastery as well, like, because I think that's a great topic as well. But what are your thoughts about that, about the risk takers that are willing and what causes some coffee shops, you and I've talked about this a lot of times, to only grow to maybe 1 or 2 locations and other ones to be like Wes, where it's like, no, no, no. In 9 years, we've got 15 locations in a roastery and then an exit to a nationwide, franchise
Yeah.
chain. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a testament to his ability to see, to have a little bit of foresight, what's coming down the road, be able to take that risk, but also, I mean, you can tell he's just super observant. Like, I think a lot of those coffee shop owners, they get in not knowing anything about the industry, which that's mistake number one. But then they go, okay, what's Dutch Bros doing? And then that's it. Or they just say, hey, all I need are Americanos and blended drinks, and I'm good. And he mentioned when they were doing the swap over from the restaurant to the roastery, he was looking at all the coffee companies that he really liked. And he said the one thing they had in common was they were all roasting their own coffee. Oh, that's probably something I should be doing too. Why am I wasting my time doing something I don't want to do, which is serving all of this food when I want to be a really good coffee company? And this is what all the other really good coffee companies I love are doing. So I think just that ability to be observant and not, like you said, get stuck in the rut of, well, I serve Americanos and I serve blended drinks, I serve energy drinks. and that's it. For some reason, I can't add anything else or change my menu or doing like that because it might make my customers angry. Or instead, like if you were to take that risk, like he did, all of a sudden you've got your own roasting operation. You've just halved your cogs because of your price of beans,
Yep.
and you've created a new revenue stream and just, you know, upped your profits. So I think his ability to be observant at what is good for the company, knowing what he wants his coffee company to be, and just saying, all right, let's do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, 100%, I think that's true. And if you're listening today, this is the word. I talked to a young guy who was starting his first coffee shop probably a month or two ago. And, we were talking about economies of scale, and we were talking about like nobody gets rich off of one coffee shop, right? Like that's bottom line. Like you're no one's going to get rich off of one shop. Like that's just not how it works. Like it's opening multiple doors that's going to grow wealth for you. I mean, that's Wes's story, right? Came from nothing, like hamstrung something together to open his first one and then open the second one, probably that was pretty risky, and by the time he was opening his third, which was the first one they actually built, Road 68, I mean? Like it was a big step to build their own thing, but it was like, this is me anchoring in of no, this is what I'm going to do. And I think that some people, when they start coffee, maybe they start as a barista, start as a manager, say, why am I making this other guy money? I should just go do my own thing. But if they're not careful, all they're doing is getting themselves a more stressful job. You know what I mean? Like they're putting their own credit on the line. They're putting their own neck on the line. They're outlaying a bunch of risk for themselves with only one door. You know what I mean? But like the downside to only having one door is like, that's a lot of pressure to put on one shop to make it, So we were consulting with a young couple in St. George wanting to start a coffee shop and build into chain. And like, I could tell in his heart, he was thinking, well, like I would love just the craft and the pour over and like the enjoyment and talking to people. And I think that if you want that, that's great. But realize you're probably not going to make much money doing it that way. The way that you
Yeah.
should be thinking about it is, how can I put somebody else in behind the window that's going to be pulling shots, serving drinks, so that I don't have to put such a tax on the business necessarily of my income from my household. For me at that age, like having 4 kids, a wife, like a house, like that's a lot of expectation to put out of a coffee shop. Like, how can I open this one, make sure that the culture's there, make sure the energy's there, make sure the quality is there, make sure the speed is there. And any money that comes out of that, how can I pay what's the minimum threshold to pay an excellent person and then be cashing away, squirreling away to open location number 2. And now I have 2 cash engines generating for me. And if there was a 10 to 15 to 20% profit margin I was expecting out of that store, now I've multiplied that by 2. And now I have 10 to 15 to 20% profit margin out of 2 stores. And if I open up a third one, I have 10 to 15 to 20% out of that third one. And then some of them are going to be a cash cow versus other ones that are probably going to be more of a break even, but you're not putting all your expectation on one coffee shop to justify your lifestyle. The way that you grow wealth within coffee is multiple locations. That's the only way you do it. So how can I keep my costs, like you were saying, low? How can I keep my volume high? And how can I enable myself to open more locations, which honestly is just like you said, looking for new opportunities. It's the roastery. It's creating my own energy drink. It's creating my own frat. It's like we help people do every day at Indie Coffee Coalition as well. I mean, that the whole point is, how can we keep as much money in your pocket as possible? Not that you would just sit on it with one location, but how do you multiply your wealth? So I think, man, kudos to them that Paul saw those things.
And I think he did it at the right time too. I mean, obviously, if you're a brand new coffee shop, it could be, or coffee company, it could be incredibly daunting to say, "Oh my gosh, I have to open 2 more locations. I have to get my own energy drink too. I have to get my own frat mix too." Like that's a lot. That's a lot of cash out of pocket right out
That's
the
right.
gate when you're trying
That's
to
right.
open your first location. But leveraging, like you said, the profits to the revenues coming in from say 2 locations, and like staggering out and having an actual plan of, this is my growth plan. I'm going to open a location. I'm going to open a second location. I'm going to use the revenue from that to then start my roasting. I'm going to use the revenue from that and those 2 other stores to open a third store. And then you just keep stair stepping up. Okay, now I slide in the energy drink. Okay, now I open another location. Now I slide in the frat mix. Now I open another location. And you're basically just letting your company begin to start paying for itself with revenue versus you taking all that risk right up front. And I think Paul did that. They did that really well, because he said it was early 2000s when they made that shift to roasting, which is probably perfect timing. He had a couple, 2, 3 locations under his belt, dropping the roasting and the baking. Apparently, they do all the baking for all the bakery goods too. So there's another huge cost
Right.
of goods right out the gate. And then they've got all this saved revenue that's coming in, and they're using their own products, labeling their own products. It's all just. I think it's funny, he sort of ran the master class gauntlet without even having ever gone through it, just starting it all on his own in the 90s.
Hey, coffee experts. Those of you running independent coffee shops, you're always looking for ways that you can drop your costs. And we here at the Coffee Experts Club really understand that. And so we've started something called Indie Coffee Coalition. And what it's designed to do is to drop your costs on two of the things that you're probably experiencing the highest sales volume in your store. And that is energy drink and frat mix. Those two line items, we've created our own products and are offering you those products at a reduced cost so that you can cut out the Red Bull of America. You can cut out the main lines of energy drinks that you're doing and serve your own energy drink at a reduced cost on a line item that you're probably already making a lot of sales on anyway. The best way that you can grow sales is by dropping your costs and maintaining a current volume. So check us out at indiecoffee.co, and we'll love to tell you more there. If you're listening to the show, like Ben said, the last thing we ever want is for our listeners to get overwhelmed by the things we're talking about, but we also want to try and expand your minds, right? The whole reason we do Coffee Experts Club isn't for us to say, hey, look at us, we're coffee experts. It's no, let's bring experts from around the country. We've got to interview people from all over the states, to come and share with us their wisdom. And I think that my hope is that you would hear something and it would inspire you. The whole reason we created Indie Coffee Coalition was for the sake of trying to keep money in the pockets of the little guys, right? And so if you're like, oh man, now I've got to create my own energy drink. No, you don't. Just find somebody that's going to cut your costs. Stop giving it to the man. How can we help you be empowered? So, a lot of people get stuck with Indie Coffee Coalition because they're like, wait a minute, don't you become the man? You talk so much trash on the Red Bulls or, whatever it is that the energy drink that you're advocating for. But isn't that what Indie is? And I'm like, no. Here's the thing is, well, first off, we're like 5 times cheaper than them. You know what I mean? So let's cut your costs. But then in that cost savings, you've already established your volume, right? You already know that you're going to see this many cars come through your drive every day wanting energy drinks. You've already established the volume. How can you now cut the costs and grow money? Because that's literally what the whole game is. And then the hope would be as you grow money, squirrel that away, and then eventually cut indie out by creating your own coffee drink or your own energy drink, because then we can cut it all the more, So I think having that insight of, no, I'm not just going to play the game the way I saw my boss play it before I started my own coffee shop, or I'm not just going to do it the way I see everybody else doing it necessarily. I'm going to look for ways that I can cut costs and that I can save cash. I know for Drew and I open up Coffee de los Mayas down in Belize, second location just opened in January. We're looking to open our third location this year. The whole reason for that is Drew and I agreed at the beginning of, we're not taking any member draws. We're not taking any money out of this business for the first 3 years. All the money lives here and churns here. Drew and I do not get paid from Coffee de los Mayas. And the reason for that is, no, let's get momentum behind this thing and take Belize by storm so that we can shore up any gaps and then let it begin to churn and make money for us. And then we can talk about investments downstream. What other businesses can we do? Could we start creating our own syrups? We start creating our own, like you were saying, maybe baked goods is something you go into. What's your passion source? But be smart about it. Don't put so much tax on your business at the beginning so that you're not able to use that money and leverage it for the future. So I think, who's really done a great job of that as well is CJ and Lindsay with Outsider. I
Yeah.
think that open these 2 locations here, sold their house, leveraged that newfound income, moved someplace less expensive that didn't have such a coffee presence, South Carolina, used that to get into a cheaper house and took that investment, opened up a location that they just opened in South Carolina and now a second one. In the meantime, also rolling out a franchise, and they've already sold 3 or 4 folks on franchises in the States using their system for Outsider. But you have to be smart on how you're doing it, and you have to make sure you're putting the dollars where it needs to go. And you need to be careful that you're not just buying yourself a job. Because if you're just buying yourself a job, you're going to be married to that thing until you grow, until you realize it can't just be built on your back.
And I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls that new coffee company owners fall into, especially if they don't know, I would say the game, but they don't know that, they see a drive-thru coffee and they say, oh, all I need is one of those and I'm good. I don't have to work anymore. It's passive income. That's not how it works. If you go into it knowing that, okay, I'm going to use 1 and 2 locations to actually bankroll my passive income, that's what it takes first, and push that revenue into these other cogs reducing items like the Brat Mix and the energy drink. That's when your company can actually start paying for itself. And you don't have that, 60-hour a week barista job, in your 30s. And you're like, what the heck? I thought I was supposed to get rich off of this. Well, yeah,
Right.
but you get so bogged down in the day to day of being your own barista that you're not looking up and going, "Oh my gosh, this is actually supposed to be part of my bankroll for the rest of my profitable operation."
Right. No, I think it's hard, right? So I remember when the first business I opened, I remember talking to the attorney that was helping me set it up, and I was running the whole business model by him. I talk about this in the masterclass in my first drive-thru coffee. But talking to the attorney and going into this business model, this was back 8, and buying into my own first business, running my own first business. And I asked him what the attorney thought about it. He said, well, I feel a whole lot better if you are planning on running it. I feel a whole lot better if you had somebody else that was going to run it, because you have a big monthly nut that you bring with you. And I remember thinking, why would I do that? Right? Because I was young. I was a young dude, didn't understand business necessarily, didn't understand how things work. I was trying to get out of my job. I was trying to escape my job by getting this new business opportunity. And if you watched masterclass, my business failed. I felt like I did all the right things, but we came into a financial crisis of 06, 07, 08, and I couldn't make it last, And I think that when it comes to the kinds of things we're talking about here, just realize when you buy a business, when you get into business, when you go into business, the whole point is, if in year one, I was able to save, like, let's say Drew and I were able to save $100,000 year one, if we just kept all the money in the business, and I open a second location, the goal would be I can save $100,000 now in 6 months because I just doubled my doors, right? And if I open up a third one, now I can save $100,000 in 3 months, because every time I do, economies of scale are giving me more money in the bank. And if I'm using that money to then fuel the next thing, it allows me to open faster, get better efficiencies, drop my cost of good, because now I can invest in starting my own energy drink, my own frat mix. So I just think, if you're listening today and you're feeling a little overwhelmed, think about, how can I, with my traffic counts established now, how do I cut my costs so that I can grow money? And with that money you grow, don't go buy a new car. Like, leave that in the business and think, what can I use that to invest to then multiply it? Because I think that's the key.
Buy a new car or buy a new shop and double your income.
Yes. Ben, man, I always enjoy talking with you, my man. I appreciate Paul Tosberg, and we didn't even get to talk about Andrew and what they're doing with roasting, but I would love to maybe visit. I think we're going to have them back on for another show, deep dive on that, how a chemistry student took all of his molecular biology and chemistry studies and turned it into roasting coffee, and just the exciting side of that. That was pretty awesome. But Ben, I appreciate you, my man. All of our listeners, thanks for joining us today for Coffee Experts Club, and we'll see you next week. Hey, experts, we've got something really awesome that we do here at Coffee Experts Club, and that's called the My First Drive-Thru Coffee Masterclass. So if you're opening your next coffee shop, I think a lot of times you may think to yourself, I know what goes into opening a coffee shop. I've been doing this for years, but maybe you've been doing it for somebody else. And maybe this is your first option of starting a coffee shop on your own. Or maybe you don't know anything about coffee and you're just like, I'm looking for a good investment opportunity. Starting a coffee shop seems like a good place to put it, and you're going to enter into it. But what you don't know is all the things that you don't know, right? And so what we've done with this masterclass is taken behind the scenes, how you find your first location, what you need to be thinking about in finding a location. We give you a gift in the masterclass where it's a step-by-step process of how you're opening your coffee shop, the different checkpoints you need, from coming up with your plans and talking with the city, and then negotiating a lease. And then how do you build a team, and what are the different pieces you need to be thinking about? It's a great masterclass, door to door, start to finish, completely free on opening up your next coffee drive-thru. So check it out. It's at myfirstdrivethru.coffee, and it's a great masterclass. You won't regret it. We'll see you on the inside there.
Thanks so much for joining us today. For those of you who are looking to become a coffee expert yourself, we offer an incredible, thorough training online for opening your first coffee drive-thru at www.myfirstdrivethru.coffee.